The first fatal accident in 19 years of nuclear reactor operation in the United States occurred at the Atomic Energy Commission's National Reactor Testing Station in Idaho on January 3rd, 1961.
Direct cause of the accident appears to have been manual withdrawal of the central control rod blade by one or more of the crew members considerably beyond the limits specified in maintenance procedures. However, there was insufficient evidence to establish the actual reason for such abnormal withdrawal.
And I think to myself, what a wonderful
Now, in today's world, nuclear disasters seem to be a part of life. Fukushima, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Captain America 4.
What the shit?
And while depictions of these events often illustrate the best of human behavior, this story is about government corruption, betrayal, and possibly even murder.
That guy was already up there when I got here.
So grab your bags and some extra napkins because this one's gonna get messy as we examine the mystery or massacre of Idaho Falls in this edition of Reactor Sl-1, an American Meltdown.
Fair warning, gorgeous. You're going to encounter some indelicate language, a smidge of ass play, but we've been prohibited from using cocaine on camera.
While tension still exists between Russia and the United States, in the 1960s, with Russia acquiring the atomic bomb, generations on both sides were convinced the end of the world was only a matter of time.
Some old fart gets really worried, pushes the button, hey, there goes Cleveland in a blinding white flash.
To power its early warning stations along the Arctic Circle, the military began experimenting with portable nuclear reactors. And in October 1958, in a remote desert 40 miles from Idaho Falls, the Sl-1 reactor was born.
Wah, wah, wah.
Under the newly formed nuclear training program known as Cadre, the reactor was to be manned by military personnel. And it was here Army Specialist Jack Burns, Richard McKinley, and Navy CB Richard Legg would meet their final destination. Now, since this is YouTube, and my producer is understandably nervous,
You pussy.
what I can say is on January 3rd, 1961 at approximately 9:01 p.m., Reactor Sl-1 was being prepared to come back online, requiring the central control rod to be withdrawn by hand by a matter of inches.
That's just lazy writing.
However, the rod was removed past its safety limit, causing the reactor to go supercritical in a matter of seconds, and the resulting steam explosion lifted the entire reactor almost 10 feet into the air. And when it was all over, Jack Burns was killed by the explosion, Richard McKinley would die on his way to the hospital, and as for Richard Legg... And while the actual cause of the explosion by removal of the central control rod appears conclusive, the question remains, was this an accident, a mere miscalculation, or did it go exactly according to plan? According to AEC Special Investigator Leo Magaza, Army Specialist Jack Burns and Navy CB Richard Legg weren't exactly compatible.
Screw you. Blow me.
While Burns, Legg, and McKinley were all family men, Burns was ambitious, hard drinking, and had a wandering eye that soured his marriage. Legg, on the other hand,
If you stuck a lump of coal up his ass, in 2 weeks you'd have a diamond.
and while all three were known to partake in strippers and alcohol in their off hours, after a drunken brawl between them, Burns and Legg's mutual disdain would evolve into absolute hatred.
I'm about to do to you what Limp Bizkit did to music in the late 90s. Dad?
With his marriage deteriorating, Burns turned to his work in the hopes of promotion. But his lifestyle was soon brought to the attention of the chain of command. And when he began reporting to his superiors about the deteriorating conditions and the aging rods becoming stuck during routine withdrawal procedure, their attitude was about what you'd expect.
You're a bitch.
And to add insult to injury, Burns would discover not only will his rival be promoted over him, resulting in Legg tormenting Burns every chance he got, but that Legg was actually having an affair with his wife Arlene.
She did this special thing with a big toe and candle wax. Ooh.
So by the evening of January 3rd, 1961, the stage was now set for our Shakespearean tragedy. As the men reported for duty on January 3rd, around 7 p.m., Army Specialist Jack Burns would receive a phone call from his wife Arlene, declaring she finally wanted the divorce. But to her surprise, Jack sounded remarkably calm, and after agreeing, he simply hung up the phone.
Okay.
Realizing she made a mistake, Arlene made several attempts to call him back, but her calls to Jack would now go unanswered.
In the business, we call this foreshadowing.
At 9:01 p.m., the men were poised over the reactor to remove the central control rod. And while I don't pretend to know the mind of Jack Burns that day, at that moment, his tormentor, the man who had taken everything from him, was now standing directly in the line of fire.
I just heard a symphony of buttholes clenching all at once.
As the alarm sounded at the AEC fire station, the crews were convinced it was just another of many false alarms. But upon arrival, they were greeted with an eerily empty control room and the roar of their Geiger counter slamming off the scale. Braving the radiation, they finally accessed the reactor area to find McKinley slowly dying, the lifeless body of Jack Burns on the floor, and what was left of Richard Legg was eventually found on the reactor ceiling with the reactor plug impaled right through his... And their corpses were so radioactive, the removal of the bodies and methods used by the attending physician performing the autopsy, shall we say, were a little unorthodox. And Richard Legg's head was so radioactive, if the stories were true, what happened next to his remains may prove ironically appropriate. But later, as the investigation continued, the cracks in Sl-1 were finally beginning to show. Since its startup in 1958, later investigation revealed the Sl-1 reactor was already breaking down.
It's a piece of shit.
Its cost-cutting and simplistic design led to the control rods warping from the heat, and insulating materials were flaking off, causing the rod to be stuck on several occasions on a reactor that required the operators to raise and lower the rods with their bare hands. In addition, while the reactor was supposed to be supervised by government contractor Combustion Engineering Incorporated, the actual operation, maintenance, and supervision was left solely in the hands of crews of 20-somethings with the experience that could be measured in months.
It's like to give a gun to a monkey.
And it turns out it was AEC Special Investigator Leo Magaza who leaked the initial investigation to the press, likely attempting to protect the military's portable reactor program. But in the end, 3 men were dead, 3 wives were widowed, 3 children were fatherless, and the reactor program was ultimately shut down.
Ugh, you are just douchey to the core.
Now, it may seem wrong to joke about these tragic events, but honestly, in the face of tragedy, sometimes humor is all you've got left.
I'm all out of devil's dandruff and I'm shaking like an angry vibrator.
So why bring this story to light in 2025? Because in October 2021, the U.S. Army announced it intends to build another prototype reactor in the exact same location. And while their government may have finally learned their lesson, I only hope the people of Idaho Falls never have to find out. Thank you for watching, and as always, remember, when they decide to clutch their pearls, we'll provide the necklace right here on Salty Buttered Bags.